Bonjour! This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org here in the early morning hours in Paris, France, where I am still very jet lagged. I've been up since 4 o'clock in the morning, scootering all around this incredible city where just moments ago it experienced, once again, another riot. And that's why yesterday you saw me do a lot of videos just showing you exactly what was happening, unedited, live, raw, for you to determine yourself. But in this video, I specifically want to give you analysis on the global unrest that is growing in the world, not only here with the particular case of the yellow vest in France, not only with the potential of more civil unrest expected in the United States in 2020, but specifically globally, because I truly do believe that we are reaching a major tipping point. Now, in the mainstream media, and according to government officials, they're usually putting out the message that everything's fine, we're in control, don't worry. You know, actual reality, that's not really a fair analysis of the situation. And this is why I wanted to give you my take on it, because this is analysis that you're not going to see on the mainstream media. The mainstream media, what they're going to do is what they usually do is they weaponize information to use it against you. This is why we see, especially in the Western media, left-wing news organizations, right-wing news organizations, but mainly establishment news organizations that push specific agendas, that push order out of chaos, and they will effectively select and choose what narrative to sell to you. Now, there is global unrest rising. I mean, there's no denying that. There's protests in Iraq. Just yesterday in Iran, the protesters burned down their central bank. There's protests in Haiti. There's protests in Ecuador, in Bolivia, in Chile, in Hong Kong, and I could keep going on and on and on about the civil unrest, the global discontent that is happening in the world right now. Now, in the Western media, if there's a protest that works out for the benefit of, let's say, an intelligence agency or to the greater bastardized goals of the neoconservatives, we're going to see that protest covered very favorably. They're going to be covered as freedom fighters. If we see a protest like the Yellow Vest movement that goes against the neoliberal globalist corporatist leader Emmanuel Macron, we're going to see three things: either no coverage, very little coverage, or just total discreditation, total nitpicking of facts to make this movement look horrible. Now, from my own experiences here, I've been reporting on the Yellow Vest for now a year. Yesterday was the 1-year anniversary. And let me give you the honest kind of take about this situation, which of course you won't hear on the mainstream media. There was incidences that made the protesters look bad. There was incidences that made the protesters look good. There was incidences that made the cops look bad. There was incidences that made the cops look good. And it's important to cover them as honestly as possible. Specifically, there was a lot of people, unlike my scenario in Hong Kong, a lot of people blocking the press and journalists from doing their job, especially when black bloc tactics were being used by some protesters to destroy either public or private property. We saw the bank of HSBC targeted. We saw a lot of people's private scooters targeted. We saw a lot of cars targeted. And in our live stream, you even saw yesterday a girl finding out that her car was flipped over and lit on fire. You saw the devastation on her face. It wasn't a happy one. Now, some people would argue that this is a way to fight the state, but in reality, all it does is increase insurance prices for people who have cars here, and insurances for private businesses here, and isolates and inconveniences someone who might have been okay with your voice, with your political opinion, but now is not going to be favorable of it. Marie Le Pen, which is kind of the counterpart to Macron, as we see literal riot police still roaming the streets here. Marie Le Pen tweeted she's the conservative counterpart to Macron. That black bloc has essentially destroyed the yellow vest movement. And this is her take and her analysis. Since essentially the yellow vest movement was a movement that brought together elements of the far left, elements of the far right, brought them together in unison against the French carbon tax and Emmanuel Macron. Since its biggest day a year ago, the protest has been declining in numbers. There's no denying that. Yesterday was a lot of people, but still very insignificant compared to the large numbers that we have usually seen here associated with the yellow vest. And there also is less of a consideration for people's private property. A year ago when I was here, there was elements of the protest that were fighting other protesters for this idea of other people's private property, making sure that people were protected, cleaning up after themselves. And that element slowly went away, and people just stopped caring as much as they did a part of this movement, with less numbers coming out. But there's a caveat to that. There's an important notice to that. Just because the yellow vest movement and the idea kind of is dying down, that doesn't mean the conditions that created the yellow vest movement died down at all. Actually, contrary to that, I've been talking to a lot of people here, and now 3 people on 3 separate incidences are telling me, you have to come here for December 10th. There's going to be a huge, insane, massive protest on December 10th. So even though this kind of social movement of the yellow vest came and went, we have to understand the conditions that created it, they haven't gone away, and they're only going to kind of continue and escalate from here. Now, if I, as a journalist, wanted to portray the government and authority in a negative light yesterday, I would have highlighted specific issues, edited it out, editorialized content that made them look bad, and I would highlight how they entrapped, encircled everyone, didn't let anyone leave, including average civilians, including average people who were just walking by, and entrapped them, kettled them in, and then started gassing them. And I would show you videos of the old man showing his asthma pump to the cop, pleading with him to let him leave, coughing, and the cops like, oh no, we're not letting you leave. I would show you the guy in the wheelchair complaining, screaming, let me leave. I would show you the average people trying to get to their job, but the police not letting them leave, telling them, just pretty much messing around with them, be like, yeah, just go to that exit. They go to the exit, cops telling them, yeah, just go to the other one. And of course they got an order from top down telling them, hey, we're encircling everyone, now we're going to gas everyone. And then again, we even had someone we interviewed yesterday talking about the detrimental effects of the tear gas that is being used here. And this is an interesting component because the police here also shot a projectile at a journalist who was clearly representing himself as a journalist, someone I was standing to next to throughout a large portion of the protest. And just moments ago I saw a video. He got shot with a police projectile right in his gas masks. It smashed the glass, and there was just blood all over this dented in, smashed in gas mask with his face, with him laying on the floor. When you look at those instances, and if I would just highlight those, you'd be angry at the state. You'd be angry at the government. That's another interesting thing to note here, is that there's also a very serious suicide problem that a lot of the police officers are dealing here with France. In part because they have access to guns and can easily shoot themselves and kill themselves, but also in large part because France not only has a long history of discontent, of protest, of people raising their voices, but they still do it a lot. And imagine having a job where you're predominantly fighting your own people in the middle of the street. That gets to people psychologically, and many people have linked the rise of the yellow vest, the rise of mass protest in France, to the increased amounts of suicides that happen with French police officers, which is an important counterpart to understand here. Now, as independent media, I try to give you both sides of the story, as you saw from yesterday. I didn't try to weaponize this information for a special interest, because I don't work for a special interest. I work for you. You guys giving me $5 on wearechange.org/donate allows me to do my job. I'm here to tell the truth and to inform you and empower you with information to show you both sides of the story. In the United States, you have the opposite of that. In the United States, you have information weaponized that is hyperbolic, that is sensational, to show you that your fellow man or woman is the problem, to push the divide and conquer agenda against the left and the right. And this is why when the global kind of unrest finally hits the United States, it's not going to be one of people versus the authorities. It's going to be the left versus the right, which is going to create a very, very dangerous situation. That's not going to be a good one. And it's only going to be happening because of weaponized information, hyperbolic, sensationalized crap that is being fed to us, promoted by, of course, the social media, and of course, an order out of chaos agenda that deserves to be called out. And the only thing stopping it is real independent reporting. But guess what? As an independent journalist, we are constantly under attack. As an independent journalist, not only slandered by the mainstream media for doing my job and trying to report on everything honestly, but also with the big social tech companies, specifically YouTube and Google, not just deranking, not just demonetizing, but censoring us in so many different ways. Because essentially, if you provide someone a clear picture of exactly what's happening, they will make the right decision. And with this global civil unrest rising, there's a potential of people making the wrong action, the wrong mistake, that will work in the favor of a special interest. The only thing that could prevent that is the truth, the light, to shine it on the darkness. And this is why, in large part, I do what I do. And I'm not able to do it without you, your support, and your help. And this is why I thank all of you guys sincerely, very much, for supporting us and allowing us to continue in the ways that we do. I hope this video provided some kind of important context as we show you the tourists here who are taking photos of Notre Dame. Paris is an incredible city, a city going through many changes. I expect more craziness to unfold here, specifically also on December 10th. Expect more coverage for us here on the ground. And again, wearechange.org/donate, wearechange.org/donate. This video, this live stream, everything I'm doing would not be possible without you. In a day and age where information can't be hidden, they sure as hell are trying to do everything to try to stop that information from coming out. And the only thing standing in their way, the only thing standing in the way of this kind of Joker movie scene, of this kind of fighting revolution, is essentially you. And that's why I'm trying to end every single broadcast by saying, love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org. Oh yeah, one more other thing. I forgot to add this particular bit in this video. Yesterday I had a moment where I was talking to some of the yellow vest protesters that were denouncing the violence and the private property destruction. There is an element still in that. It's not as vocal, it's not as powerful as it was in the beginning, but it's important to highlight that this still exists in some way. I was also specifically talking to a guy in a restaurant that recognized me. He was saying, keep up the great work. I really appreciate it. I was watching you last year. Good to see you back out here. And we were talking about some of the violence and some of the protesters being pushed back from covering yesterday's events. And he was like, no. I was like, yeah, it happened. He was like, oh yeah, that's by the extreme far leftists. They don't like anybody. And there also was specific video captured yesterday showing rioters running into the police line and pretty much escaping the riot as rioters as undercover police officers, which is also an important element to understand here, since there also is some information, some factions believing that a lot of this violence is staged. There is that kind of belief. Have we been able to independently verify it? No, we independently have not, but you are able to make a better determination by also understanding this particular information. Okay, now finally, bye. See you guys later.